If you have the privilege of managing people or leading people, rather, remember that it is a privilege and operate with humility and with a low ego and never stop being a learner. It is what I would call an incredible opportunity to be a leader, but it's also a responsibility. Don't take it for granted. Be real, be yourself, but invest in the things that you know you need to do to empower your people, remove obstacles, and hold them accountable. And if you're able to do those three things and keep your ego in check, you're going to have a long, successful leadership career.
Welcome to the True Leadership Podcast, where we sit down with executive leaders to explore what leadership really means through the lens of their stories, their wins, their struggles, their vision, and their lessons along the way. I'm Ty Hammond, founder of One Mountain Leadership and creator of the True Leadership Approach, an awareness-based path that helps leaders shift their focus from what to do about their problems to how to grow from them. Whether you're just stepping into leadership or are well-seasoned and at the top of your game, your potential won't be realized following someone else's script. But you can draw insights from their stories and turn it into wisdom by putting it into practice in your own life.
Welcome to the True Leadership Podcast, where we explore the essence of leadership beyond tactics and performance by sitting down with executives to hear what matters most to them. I'm your host, Jessy James, and today's guest is Dave Frisone. Dave is a commercial and growth leader with more than 2 decades of experience building and scaling revenue organizations across financial services, technology, SaaS, and consumer platforms. Across executive leadership roles at Bloomberg, Zillow, Smart Asset, Angie, he has led large-scale transformations spanning go-to-market strategy, sales performance, organizational growth, and revenue acceleration. Throughout his career, Dave has built a reputation for turning complexity into execution, scaling teams, creating high-performing operating models, and helping organizations grow through periods of rapid change and expansion. Dave, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
It's a pleasure to be here as well, Jessy. Thank you for having me. And I'm flattered, by the way. It's fun to hear someone else speak about the last 20 years of your life and summarize it in such a positive manner. So I appreciate that very much.
Absolutely. Dave, I'm curious, who's someone from your early life or even an early experience that shaped the kind of leader that you are today?
Well, it's a good question. Probably an overused answer, but I think my father. One fun fact about me is that I was the first male in my extended family to go to college, and so my father, who was I would say a success in that he worked very, very hard for his family to put us all through very good colleges and set us up for success. Really wanted more for his children and his son, and so for me, it was there was always this positive reinforcement by my father to do great things, to work hard, to compete in sports, and to expect more out of life. So I think from a very early age, I think that support and that expectation is what sort of drove me as a young individual.
And how did, that experience, particularly with your father, really inform the leader that you are today?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the thing about my father is that he led by example, in that even when there was a time when he was let go from his job as a middle-aged man, and I saw my father not complain, not give up, work 2 and 3 and sometimes 4 jobs to remember what comes first, which is your family and supporting the people around you. And so for me, that epitomized what it means to be a leader, right? If you are taking care of people and you're working hard and you're putting them first, leadership naturally develops. And so from my early part of my life, I would say it is my father. And then from a professional standpoint, it's really all about where I got my start.
Got it. You want to talk a little bit about where you got your start and how that impacted you as a leader?
Absolutely. I was very, very lucky to have started my career at a company called Bloomberg Financial Markets. And today everyone knows who Michael Bloomberg was. But when I came out of college, Bloomberg Financial Markets was really a startup. No one, unless you were a bond trader on Wall Street, no one knew who Michael Bloomberg really was. And so I got to grow up in an environment where they really put supporting and empowering the employees first. They invested in people. I think before that was a popular thing. We were a disruptive culture with a low ego and an all hands on deck type of atmosphere. So for me, as a young man coming out of college, I really learned from the very best how to create a low ego culture and a culture of us against the world. And so I still am in touch with many of the leaders that I worked for 30 plus years ago. And so taking that spirit of servant leadership and applying it to going to market, I thought was really a great experience for me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. What does true leadership mean to you? What makes a true leader from your experience?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it just a second ago, and it's probably an overused term, but I really am a firm believer in servant leadership. And people think of it from different ways. Sometimes they understand it from giving back to your community, but I think a true leadership starts and ends with servant leadership. And what that means is three things to me. One is that you are really empowering the people around you, and that is really having a really strong sense of what a people process looks like. So, in other words, who do you hire? How do you hire? How do you onboard them? Like, what is the experience of people to have in order to get the most out of people? And that comes with just total empowerment. Secondly, is once they are employees, how are you removing obstacles? How are you making their jobs easier? Right? What are you doing to invest in them so that they can be successful? And then the third piece that I think oftentimes leaders miss is that all that support comes with accountability as well. And so you won't have a successful sales team, and you won't be a true leader if you don't build accountability around all the things that you're supporting and the obstacles that you're removing and the career growth that you're trying to build. And so I think if you can get a really good balance of those three things, I think that's what a true leader does. And I think it shows itself in different ways depending upon what level of the organization that you're in. But yeah, for me, that pretty much sums up my philosophy.
Can you share about a time when you realized that your way of leading, of living, didn't meet the demands of your work and life anymore, and that growth was needed?
That's a really good question. What I would say is, I would think of a time where I had to stretch and adjust how I, in terms of the type of sale that I was executing and the type of people that I was working with. So, as I mentioned, the first 20 years of my career were working with and managing pretty senior people at Bloomberg and on Wall Street, right? So you were dealing with real Wall Street professionals and people that had been there and done that. And of course, we had a lot of younger employees as well, but a lot of the meat and potatoes of the sales team were experienced professionals, and there's a way to manage them that's a little different than when I made a transition into fintech and took on the role of opening and scaling Zillow's New York office. And that was a lot of fun because I came into Zillow from a financial services background, having zero experience in real estate and zero experience in digital ads, and honestly, very little experience in SMB and mid-market sales. Everything previously was enterprise sales. And so what I would say from a leadership perspective, how I had to stretch is I had to really go back and be a teammate of the people that I was working with. And I would like to think that I have a low ego, but really treating everyone that we hired as equals in a sense, in terms of how we are growing and learning together. Because they were mostly new employees, so we're all sort of new to the Zillow culture. And so I had to go from managing large enterprise relationships with very experienced salespeople to an SMB shift, and with less experienced salespeople that really needed help and guidance. And what I found, the way to do that, even though I was several layers up in terms of the management chain, right? What I decided to do was go through the new hire experience. And so, although I was running the office, I went through new hire training. I learned the product side by side with 12 other people that were in my class. I did the cold calls with them. I role played with them. I did everything that they had to do. So I really understood the role, so that when I exited the new hire training and became their leader, I had a certain level of credibility, and had to earn that very, very quickly, so that they would respect the work that I was doing. They would have a level of understanding that they knew that I knew what they were going through. And when I made recommendations, they often came from experience or from being very, very boots on the ground with them day to day. So I think that was I wouldn't say it was a difficult transition, but it was a challenging transition, and one that I really, really learned a lot from, because it was a culture change, it was a sales process change, and it was a leadership change that required a different way of thinking.
Dave, continuously growing and learning requires a real commitment, as you know. And thinking about your journey over the past few years, what's been the most valuable investment that you've made in yourself for your own growth?
Yeah, I think a very valuable investment for me was really learning how to switch gears, and being able, to fly at a very, very high level, right, in one meeting, and be board facing or investor facing, during a fundraiser round, and then the very next morning being in a huddle with salespeople, and getting them excited about the work that we're doing, doing a training on something as simple as objection handling, or I still have my old gong from my Zillow days, or banging the gong and getting people excited. So I think I learned how to operate at both levels, and I think that's really valuable, because oftentimes leaders are either really, really good at being in the weeds, or they are really, really good sitting behind spreadsheets and Salesforce reports, and using a lot of business vernacular, and going from senior meeting to senior meeting without really understanding what's happening boots on the ground. And so I think, regardless of the level, you really need to be doing both of those. And one person I learned that from was Spencer Raskoff, who was the CEO of Zillow when I was there, and he would be in front of thousands of employees giving a quarterly update, and then he'd fly to New York and he would join me in a huddle, and he would go desk to desk, and he would listen to phone calls, and then he would speak to customers. And so it really gave me some insight as to how important it is to be able to operate at all levels, to be a well-rounded leader. And I urge any leader that feels stuck in a rut of doing one of those two things too often, or don't feel comfortable, playing both roles. I think it's super important that you sharpen that part of your game. And I'm still imperfect. I still think I need to get better operating here and operating here. And I think that's what keeps you sharp.
Dave, what's your vision for your leadership, your legacy, or the impact that you want to have in the years ahead?
Oof. I think it's hard to, I don't know. I think I'm too humble to think of legacy. I'll tell you what I enjoy, because I've managed hundreds and hundreds of people, and I've managed probably 100 leaders as well, over my career. So I think the legacy, or what I enjoy the most, and before we hop on this call, I was on LinkedIn and saw 2 or 3 messages, and 2 of them were from 2 people that used to work for me. I won't say their names, but one of them is a leader now who said, "Hey, Dave, I remember when we were here and you said this. It always stuck with me, and I continue to do this or that. And then this I apply this in my daily role as a leader." And then there's someone else who's an individual contributor that reached out to me for advice and career advice, and what their next move should be. So I think it's less about legacy and more about that feeling of creating impact on other people's careers, and knowing that the work that you did was valuable, and that you were part of shaping what they become as individuals. And I don't want to go too far out there, but hopefully what they become as humans. I think I think early in my career, when I was a young leader, I tried not to get too close to the people that I worked with, or that worked for me. And I think that was just a learning curve that I was on, where you had to have hard conversations stuff sometimes, and so sometimes it's better to be a little more aloof, or try to keep personal stories and out of it. And I've come full circle on that. I really think that it's important to share what's happening in your life. And let people share what's happening in their lives with their children or their family or their parents or whatever it may be. I think it forms a stronger bond, and allows you to have more difficult conversations when you need to have them, because there's no wall between the two of you. There's no uncomfortableness between the two of you. So it is there is a fine line that you have to walk sometimes with that. But as a younger leader, that was the front that I tried to put up. And as I've gotten older and more experienced, you realize that's not how you connect with people. Having a strong EQ means knowing and making sure they know that you care. So I'm not sure how we meandered to that part of the conversation, but to me, that's something that I think about all the time, and something that used to worry me as a young leader.
Sounds great. Sounds like people are really important to you, and you like, investing in them, and that's sort of the legacy to some extent that you will leave behind.
I mean, I'll expand on that, Jessy, because I think that's really important. I think that in order for an organization to be really super successful, they need, there's 3 Ps, there's 4 Ps. For me, it's the 3 Ps. It's product, it's process, and it's people. And so most companies, if they're doing okay, have a good product market fit. And sales process is a sales process. Like you need to dig into sales process and figure out what's working, what's not, what tools do they have, what tools do they need, what does world class look like for an organization. And a lot of people are really good at doing that, but it's people development that drive it all. And if you are creating a winning culture through servant leadership, and you have a playbook, and you stick with it, like saying that people are everything is not an exaggeration. Because if you can develop people the right way, you can get them to do really hard things for the right reasons. And oftentimes the hard things are sales process and things that they might not want to do, or they might not understand why it's good for them. So if you develop people the right way, you will create a world-class experience for your customer, right? And you'll just magnify the product market fit and whatever your growth goals are. I just wanted to share that with you, because I really do believe that investing in people and creating a winning culture is way more than half the battle.
Got it. Where do you feel most tested right now, Dave? I mean, what challenges are stretching you the most, both in leadership and in life?
Well, I would say in leadership, I'll start with life. And I wouldn't say it's challenges, but I'm very blessed to have 3 beautiful daughters, and they're just growing up too fast. Like my youngest is 16. She went to a prom last night, and my middle one just finished her freshman year of college at Georgia, and my oldest is just finished a sophomore year at Penn State. And I'm really, really proud of them. But the challenging thing is understanding that they're starting to spread their wings, and I'm hopeful the things that me and my wife have taught them are going to help them sort of leave the nest. So the challenges that I have is sort of like coming to grips with the fact that this is happening, and at the same time being so proud of everything that they're doing and how they're doing it. So I would say from a life perspective, it's managing change, and it's not really that hard. It's just different. And from a career perspective, I think the biggest challenge is what a lot of people are dealing with, which is just the heavy influx of AI into everything that we are doing. And so the challenge for me is to really understand the landscape, and understand how to use AI in a sales process in the most effective manner. And so my philosophy on all the changes with AI and so forth is things are always changing. And if you've been in sales and sales leadership long enough, sales enablement tools have always been there. And I think the important thing that you have to think about is not how you plug everything you're hearing about into your sales process. It's everything else about sales process that you should be already doing, which is examining every step and understanding what you're doing well and leaning into it. And then also understanding what you're not doing well and maybe where you need some help. And then thinking about what tools from sales enablement or artificial intelligence that are going to, that you can test into that you think will have the most impact on your business.
So this last question is more of an invitation. You have this time and space to offer to our listeners whatever it is that's top of the mind for you, and just share straight from your heart. The floor is yours. Take your time.
I think I'll relate it just to what we discussed and just to leadership and sales leadership, and that is if you have the privilege of managing people or leading people rather, remember that it is a privilege, and operate with humility and with a low ego, and never stop being a learner. I think it's just it is what I would call an incredible opportunity to be a leader, but it's also a responsibility. So don't take it for granted. Be real, be yourself, but invest in the things that you know you need to do to empower your people, remove obstacles, and hold them accountable. And if you're able to do those three things and keep your ego in check, you're going to have a long, successful leadership career.
Yeah, that's some. I really appreciate the wisdom. That was great. Some powerful messages there. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. I've gotten so much out of this conversation. I'm sure whoever's listening will equally benefit from what you've shared. Thank you so much for coming on the True Leadership Podcast.
Jessy, it was really, really a pleasure, and I hope I added some value to you and your listeners or your viewers. And thank you very, very much.
Thank you, and you absolutely did.
That's it for this episode of the True Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this to catch future episodes. This conversation was brought to you by One Mountain Leadership, where we help leaders grow the capacity, confidence, and presence of true leadership through the True Leadership approach. To learn more about the approach, our offerings, our community, and how we can help you realize your potential in both leadership and in life, visit us at onemountainleadership.com.